everyone. It's great to be here with you on LEAD and our ability to be able to continue to serve you. And it's great to serve you this week with a week where student athletes are participating in fall programming under the.
Hey, Bob, I think you're on mute.
I am not.
Nope.
So,
He's coming through. You're good, Bob.
Thank you. So again, with programming happening this week here in fall sports, we greatly appreciate you being here, and we'll add clarification where we can on what we're hearing this week. And I'm going to turn it over to Laura, and Laura's hit some curveballs pretty well this week around technology, and she's going to give you some updates there. Laura?
You know, I have found that in a sports organization, there are an awful lot of idioms and things that can go very well with the way things happen. Just a few reminders and information for you around technology. First of all, on the Getting Started guide, there is a section up at the top that's called Updates. Those are where we are posting known things that you may save yourself some time of not struggling with them and or even not even letting us know that you're struggling with them. Right now, there are 3 different bullet points up there that are all things that we know are happening, and either a solution or just a note to continue to wait for those. So please refer to that as it works to save you time. Secondly, know that all of the pieces that we continue to send that are somewhat COVID related around sports and activities, guidance and information, there is a link on your dashboard called Sports Guidance and Information COVID Related. That leads you to a single page where all of those are documented. So our goal has been to get them to you in an email so that you know that they're there and different, but it also may feel like you're getting an awful lot of emails and trying to find documents. I believe right now there are about 8 documents there and probably 3 more by the end of the day. So a one-stop shop for you ADs, for you coaches, assistants, anybody else who wants all of those documents. Third, the curveball that Bob refers to, we are struggling with transfers and reviews right now, and the path that our web developer was headed down to get a new portal built, we found out midday Tuesday that needed to be redone. So we have resurrected the old transfers and reviews portal to use for the meantime. You received an email yesterday that has instructions on that. We would ask you to please follow the requested dates on there for when to submit transfers for various types of athletes. We are hopeful that within a couple weeks we'll be up and running with the new one. So really want to keep that use as minimal as possible, but also knowing your timelines and the timelines on our staff to review those. You can find all of that information in the email. If you click on the eligibility button, it leads you to a version of the directions that came out in the email yesterday. And then fourth, Susie's going to pop into the chat right now. We sent out a to-do list for you about a week ago. If you would continue to work through those items. Getting your school pages updated continues to become more and more important as other people are looking for information from your school, whether that's neighboring schools, whether that's us, whether that's media. People are looking for information about you. So please make sure that those pages and things on that to-do list are updated. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Bob, and I will move into the chat. And if there are technology questions, I'll start to address those.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Again, your leadership and Susie's leadership around our webpage and technology is greatly appreciated, and we appreciate your ability to serve the schools through this through technology. It's important to remember decisions that have been made and where we're going. We checked off another box and sent out to you the fall training season guidance for football and volleyball, and as soon as we send that out, there's always questions, right? So we'll get to some of those a little bit later. Specifically for football and volleyball, we also believe that your guidance, which is the next bullet there, will be out to you this afternoon. That is what we're expecting to do and committed to do for today. And then you'll see the continued progression. Again, we continue to hear around what do culminating events look like for fall. We know that that is a priority, and we need to make sure that we're making the best decisions with all the information that we have, especially as schools return to learn. and enter back into our buildings. That being said, our other seasons are waiting, right, around winter and then spring. And what does that framework look like? So that is a progression of where we're at. We're getting it out to you as quickly as we can, but we also want to be as accurate as we can when we get that out to you. One of the things that has been accomplished this week, and to give you an update, is Region Secretaries met via Zoom yesterday, and I'm going to turn it over to Eric Martins to give you an update where we're at with that.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks again for all your work. Hope that your activities are up and running this week and that things are going well. Appreciate all the questions that have come in, and folks are continuing to do a great job within their schools to get the season started. Our region secretaries met yesterday, and I'm not going to give you the entire 3.5-hour meeting, but most of those folks are on these calls on a weekly basis as they monitor where things are at. We had a great number of items on the agenda, but two that really stand out. And there's nothing that's been answered here, but they have the same questions that you do at your school level. And we talked about, what that postseason experience could look like and what will drive the decisions that are going to be made. And so we think about what's the structure and the timing of that. So with shortened seasons, our postseason has also been shortened. So should we be able to do some kinds of culminating events? How will that look? What will that be? And what can we do with that? There was great concern around facilities and venues, knowing that an adjustment in timing is happening automatically by the shortening of seasons, what's going to be available. But beyond that, then many of those venues could be college campuses that now have new rules around whether or not access is going to be allowed. So lots of folks that are working to identify what could be possible and where those things could be. As a member school, it would be good for you to be thinking about your own facilities and how they might support postseason events that go forward there. And so working directly with your region secretary would be important to say, these might be some options. Perhaps our tennis setting isn't going to be the same as what it was in the past. How else could we do some kind of postseason, and where would be viable options to be able to hold that? One of the bigger questions that needs to be answered would come through return to participation task force, as well as then onto the executive committee, would be about extending a regular season if not everyone makes the playoffs or the postseason or the culminating event, whatever that happens to be. Lots of schools have been asking about that, and there's not a determination at this time, but those kinds of conversations are happening. There's also a desire by our region secretaries to have lots of ability to make decisions quickly. And so be thinking within your regions about how you will address those decisions. A region committee typically has that authority, and yet timelines are always going to be short as we go through this school year. And so we have to be prepared, kind of have the guiding principles in place for your region about how you want to do that as you go forward. The second part of that, obviously, is the financial implication. Our regions have come over the last number of years with very little to no contribution from member schools because people love to go to region events and section events, and our spectator sizes are now going to be limited. And does it even make sense to try to do any kinds of fans depending on what the activity is? Are there things that we typically haven't charged for that we might charge for if we're able to hold them? Just things like that should be things you think about. The regions are also talking about and looking at where they're at with reserves and reimbursements. The board gave one-time permission at this time for regions to maintain more than 20% carryover from last year into this year, obviously recognizing the challenges that finance is going to present for our regions. So that's significant. And like I said, school contributions haven't been in place for a while for almost all regions. There have been back in the history of the league where that has taken place. And so just trying to make sure everything can balance and we can still provide some activities and opportunities for kids is going to be important. And so regions are going to continue to have work to do to try to fit everything together. But know that your region secretaries have been working really hard. They've been connected to us and are continuing to try and do the best job they can for you and with you for each one of the regions. So thanks to all of them.
Thank you, Eric. And we have a number of things coming through on chat today, and if we have time at the end, we'll get to them where we can. And I see some are responding to the questions coming in on chat as well. So at this time, let's move into the approved fall training seasons and the information that was sent out to you to guide you on what can occur during these seasons. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jody to talk specifically to volleyball, and I'll come back to football. Jody? There, Jody?
Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone, and thanks. Good morning. As I was saying before you could hear me, we appreciate certainly all of the input and thoughts that you have with questions and or comments that you're putting into the chat. It really does help us to inform, it really does help to inform how we move forward. Some of the items in volleyball that have come up that we will be looking at and addressing, one around face masks. It says before and after practice, we'd like to see the use of those face masks. It should also state during. There is a differential between what football and volleyball are currently stating around face masks, and that clarification will be made. But just so you know, we want to, and given that it's an indoor activity, continue to provide a safe environment for our student participants to be taking part in the training season. So we want to ensure that at all times that it's possible to wear face masks, that is done. Also around locker rooms, certainly that is something that we will be looking at and having further conversation around, and we'll be getting some updated information to you regarding volleyball. I'm going to speak a little bit to club after Bob takes a look at football. So if you could just hold up with questions about club and participation in dual training season and club activities, that would be helpful in the chat. Bob?
Thanks, Jody. And again, we're going to try and be as consistent as possible in what we're able to offer. Face masks is a great example of that. We're taking considerations from the National Federation, also the MDH, along with the MDE where possible. Locker rooms, I met with our district football chairs yesterday, and it's one of the things we talked about just as a sample. So when at all possible, don't use your locker rooms if you don't have to. It comes into play like it does for football. If you're choosing to use equipment, you do not have to. Offer that opportunity for locker rooms to be utilized under both MDE and MDH standards as well. Around equipment, recommendations that we are making is around make sure that student athletes are using the same equipment, helmet for instance, during this fall training season as they will in the spring. So how you catalog that or keep track of that, that's something to consider. And then the question comes up around helmets as well. Use the NARA guidelines, and I looked at those again, and they continue to talk about a season and for a year. And we believe that the fall season here, the approved training season, is an extension of that season, and that therefore reconditioning would not have to occur. But again, worn by the same individual both in the fall training season along with the spring season when we actually get into the competition as well. Football advisory, along with our staff, did recommend no spectators. Again, the progression that you have and that you were sent is a combination of what occurs during the summer and the progression along with the start of the season during the school-sponsored season. So use your judgment in terms of what you want to do. And again, you can do less than that. So some may just do skill-like training with football without equipment. That is definitely an option for you to be able to do. And then if some would like to do that culminating event, so to speak, of a thud scrimmage, again, the recommendation has been no spectators due to the fact that we know when there are spectators, there's increased opportunity for exposure. And the intent around the training seasons is to get our student athletes with our coaches in a specific manner and give them that opportunity. So that's it for football on me. And then at this point, I'm going to turn it back to Jody to talk a little bit more about the fall training seasons.
Thanks, Bob. Laura, if you would bring up that slide, I'd appreciate that on fall training. So fall training, the season, again, for volleyball and football, and later for our spring sports that will begin their fall training season on October 5th. what does that mean for dual participation in non-school programs? The way that we are interpreting this is that non-school programs can function at the same time as our Minnesota State High School League fall training seasons. The caveat to that, or the guidance that we're providing, is that it may not be directed by any of your varsity, JV, B squad, or C squad coaches or freshman coaches who are part of your high school staff. It may not be organized. They may not in any way influence participation by a student. It really is up to the student's family or parents to determine if there would be an opportunity for that student to participate in a non-school program during the fall training seasons. We do not govern non-school programs. And again, because it is a training season where practice is allowed, but competition scrimmages are not, we feel that it's up to families to determine whether or not they want to be participating in those types of activities. And so again, further clarification will be provided in a document that Laura will be posting and will be made available on the webpage, and you'll be able to see that document with that guidance available on it. In addition, we will be sending families back to you who contact us regarding those club participations and practices that your school community wants to allow students to take part in and or to provide parents with that information as well. I'm going to move on, and again, if you have questions that are relevant to the information you see on the slide, you can go ahead and put that into the chat, and we will get, if need be, further clarification, but we feel that handout that is available on the website now will help to answer those questions. As it relates to cheerleading guidelines, those guidelines are going out today. The guidelines do pertain strictly to sideline cheer, which is a league-sponsored activity. If you have competitive cheer programs in your school community, you will need to ensure that you're working, if it's through community education or whomever that governing organization is within your school community, and how you're offering that competitive cheer program will need to be addressed by that group. The sideline cheer guidelines, again, specifically speaking, those things that I think are most relevant are, again, indoor versus outdoor. We do have sideline cheer programs that do cheer for soccer, and we do have soccer running this fall. We also want to be very cognizant about stunting squads and ensuring that those masks that students are wearing during stunting meet the requirements that are in the guidelines. They must be breakaway. They must have breakaway connections. So meaning you cannot have a face mask that ties directly behind the head that does not break away if in fact you are a stunting squad. So again, those guidelines are there for you. They will be sent out and provided to you today. One update as well on the education requirements for your cheer coaches. If you have sideline cheer programs that stunt, in the past, those cheerleading advisors or coaches had to complete ACA, the safety course, and Stunt Progressions 1. And the Stunt Progressions 1 course was an in-person course. That has all moved to an online delivery mechanism now. And your coaches, cheer coaches, now must complete that new online course one time in the next 4 years. If they've taken it previously, within the next calendar year, they must complete that requirement, and then it'll be a requirement that will follow once every 4 years. And if you have a cheer coach that does not or has not gone through Stunt Progressions 1, then they will have to take that prior to your team being allowed to stunt in any form, whether it's a pep fest, whether it's, or whatever form that might be in your school community, or any of the cheer programs that they will be cheering at. So additional information is also being posted on the League's website. And with that, Bob, I'm going to turn it back to you. You're muted, Bob.
I'm going to turn it back over to Eric here. We're on popular topics, where we also continue to learn information and pass that on to you as effectively as possible. So Eric, if you would update our group here today on what you have learned and anything new.
Thanks, Bob. And again, transportation and facilities, just in watching the chat, less on transportation right now, but a lot on facilities and where things are at. So we'll start with transportation, and we have created a document, again, trying to make sure there's clarity. And so Laura's going to pull that up, and it's going to just be very basic. And again, the requirements are led back to where you are as a high school. Remember that there's also guidance from MDE and MDH in terms of the metrics for your county and how those are determined. So the magic number at high schools is to be below 30. And if you're below 30, then you'd either be in hybrid and or in person, depending on how low those are. But if you are in distance learning at the high school, that means you are in virtual learning only, means that we're in virtual coaching only, and so there's not going to be any transportation. If your high school is able to be at a hybrid level, that means that transportation can be done at 50% of capacity. Again, always making sure that you have as much space between your riders as possible, and that masks or face coverings are worn during the trip. Then if you are able to be at in-person, you can be even at a greater capacity than that, and you can be near to the full capacity as your district chooses. Again, face coverings would be required, and that you should always maximize the amount of space between students who are riding. So focusing on those things, we did provide the link to the fall planning guide or the school planning guide down below so that you can see where you would find that. But from the transportation aspect, remember that your district may choose to be more restrictive than what this is. That's not us creating the rules. This is taking the information from MDE and MDH and bringing it back to you. In regard to facilities, there's a big difference between indoor and outdoor, and especially as school gets started. Competition, first of all, is allowed to take place via the youth sports guidance in the appropriate way in which it happens. So that would be the competitors, the coaches, and the officials that are necessary for that competition to take place. Using roster sizes that are appropriate, obviously, is what would be expected. At this time, the MDE and MDH requirement is that fans are not allowed within our school buildings due to the fact that they constitute non-essential visitors. That's a really difficult requirement, and we recognize that that's going to be a challenge. In terms of fall sports, that directly impacts swim and dive, and earlier, if you were watching the chat, Lisa made mention of that in there, and this is the interpretation that's being provided to us by Department of Ed and the Department of Health. If they are outdoor, fans are allowed. No social gatherings should be greater than 250 across the entire state of Minnesota. And so those individuals that are part of the competition exist as their own group. I saw that question again in the chat here today, and that's been something we've touched on a number of times. The competitors, the officials, and the coaches constitute their own group as long as you are able to keep them separate from your fans. Your fans then can be up to 250 outside with appropriate social distancing. Masks are always recommended outside. Indoor, they're required. And so just make sure that those are the factors that you are using as you prepare and put things together for that. So recognize that this has created some concern and perhaps frustration around outside groups renting spaces from our schools and how those groups are operating. We believe that there will be additional guidance that will create some consistency between our requirements as well as those that rent facilities. And so we're waiting on that to come from the Department of Ed relative to school buildings and also what it does for those that rent primarily through community ed type programs, et cetera. So those are the updates there for transportation and facilities. And we'll turn it back to you, Bob.
Great, thank you, Eric. And again, great questions coming in on chat. I can tell by our time we won't get to a lot of questions on chat today, but we'll do our best to answer those in the FAQs coming out. A lot of our questions as I enter into the compliance world with the Minnesota State High School League around online providers and what that means for eligibility. And we're going to show you a document that we're working on that we will get to you in just, well, it looks like we're going to show it now. So look at this reference here that will assist you as a tool that's not completed yet, that will assist you in what we're going to discuss here around online providers. If we could go back to the slides, please, Laura. When we think about an online charter school, all right, ask yourself, is that online charter school a member or if it's a non-member? If it is not a member school, they cannot participate in their program. When it comes to a charter school and a student transfers, their membership or their eligibility lies with that charter school. Don't forget bylaw 111, around competition for one calendar year. At the school the student was enrolled. Again, that's 1 calendar year. The document around the MDE and approved online providers is important. If it exists there, indicate whether or not it is a charter school or held by a public school. Those are important. And then there's homeschools. The questions that we get around homeschools, and some will say we have a homeschool family that is registered through our district, but is doing their education through an online charter school. That cannot occur. A homeschool is providing its own education. They need to be registered with your district in order to be identified homeschool. And again, their eligibility lies within their residence school. So one of the responses that Susie's done a great job in getting to you, if we could go to that next slide, if you ask a question around an online provider, and in this scenario, we have Virtual Academy out of Houston, and that student is transferring there. And the response is then, again, according to our board statement, that the residence is located in your district, the student transfers directly from your school to that public online provider, and that it is not a charter school. Although it is considered a transfer in this scenario, there is no penalty for that transfer and their varsity eligibility remains intact at its residence school. So again, this document will assist you, I think, as we get it out and trying to get it accurate and written in a way that is going to assist you because it is complicated. Continue to utilize us to assist you around questions with online providers and or transfers. At this time, what we are going to do is we continue to work with you and also MSHSL. We've talked about them in the past and the work that they've done, and I'm going to turn it over at this time to Brent Shimmick to share information that they've collected from many of our member schools and their membership. Brent?
Thanks, Bob. Earlier in July or in June, we had a virtual meeting about diversity, specifically within our organization, Activities Directors Organization. And from there, we created an ad hoc committee. You can go up a little higher on that document, or you can see who was on that committee talking about governance of the MSHSL and how the leadership has been selected. And in July, you received an email from Amanda Johnson through the high school league to fill out a data survey. And again, probably last week, a second one. So far, there's been about 314 people that has responded to that. If you are a member or not a member, either way, if you're an activities director, please go online and fill that data out. That data will be used to help us create some changes possibly to our constitution that will go to the MSHSL region reps in October at their meeting for a leadership and constitutional change. If you cannot find that email, if you go in the chat, Mark Queasley has posted what that link is to fill out that short Google form, and that will really help us. Thanks, Bob.
Great job, Brent, and we appreciate the work of MSHSL and how they serve our professionals here that we assist on a weekly basis. So we're just about out of time here. One thing I did see on chat, just to clarify, around 7-on-7 football. Again, 7-on-7 type activity football, if it's held, if it's offered by an outside organization, a non-school organization, your students have the ability to participate in that program, but they cannot be coached by your coaches if it's an outside organization. All right, if there's 7-on-7 like activities occurring with your coaches during your 12 training day sessions, that is a question that's occurring. So that would be more 7-on-7 like activities during those 12 days. Your coaches obviously can work with them during those 12 days. So again, we'll get to the FAQs here out to you. We typically do that on Monday, and to the best of our ability to get those answered, and otherwise reach out, feel free. Thanks for joining us. Great job in getting our students off and running this week, and good luck with the rest of the week and heading into next week. We'll sign off at this point, and thanks again for your attendance today in the Lead Network.